enforcement, public safety, health and welfare committee meeting. It's February 21st, 2023 at 4:30. We'll begin with a moment of silence, please. Thank you, Mr. Rudy.
Yes, sir.
Pray with me if you'd like to.
Well, dear Father, this has been a very beautiful day, and I pray that we have rejoiced and been glad in it and grateful as a gift from you with no next day guaranteed. So I pray that we live in the moment and appreciate each one. For the work of this committee, Father, I pray for your guidance and for the personnel who are really subject to the decisions by this committee and by council, the emergency services personnel, the first responders, the sheriff's department, law enforcement, as they protect us and help and serve. I pray also that you would protect them, give them guidance, strength, insight, and all the help that you can. Pray in your name. Amen.
Sheriff Crenshaw, will you lead us in the pledge? Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, sir. Need a motion to approve October 18th, 2022 regular minutes.
So moved.
Second. Any changes, amendments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We'll start with discussion, Mr. Sheriff Mike Crenshaw on law enforcement salary update.
Some data for the previous year.
Thanks, sir.
Good afternoon, council members, and administrator. Appreciate this opportunity to come and have a discussion concerning law enforcement salaries. You know, I want you to know that I appreciate council's efforts in trying to get our salaries increased. You know, we have been able to go, since I've been sheriff, in the 10 years I've been sheriff, we've gone from $29,000 a year starting deputy pay to $41,500 for starting deputy pay, and I'm very pleased with that. Share with you kind of where we're at, though. I think we've got to continue to move our starting salary up in public safety. Give you some data. Lancaster County, which is very similar in size, I think, to Oconee, they just recently raised their starting pay to $50,000 a year. Of course, Highway Patrol is at $50,000. We went to Clemson University. One of my employees went to Clemson University about 2 weeks ago, meeting with them concerning some educational opportunities for our employees. And the city of Charleston was there recruiting Clemson University students to come to work there, and their starting pay is $62,000 a year. And we all know cost of living is going to cost more to live in Charleston than it is here. But you know, when we go down there to those students, graduates, and try to get them to put an application in at $41,500 a year, I say, no, we're going to go to the coast. You know, we're going to move to Charleston. So we struggle there, getting those applications in, getting quality applicants to apply. Greenville County, as far as upstate, you know, they're in the high 40s as far as starting pay. So, you know, how we get there and when we get there, I don't know. But I'm telling you, in order to, I think we're at a crossroads post-COVID with the quality of applications we're receiving as well as the quantity of applications that we're receiving. We've set up interviews for open deputy positions, and some folks just fail to even show up, fail to even call. We've had two recent hires that that decided this wasn't for them. So they didn't even go to the academy, and that's okay. You know, this job's not for everybody. But you know, I would like for us to consider moving that starting pay, getting there, whether it's 2 years to get there, or ever how long it takes us. You know, I think that in order to continue to attract quality law enforcement people with the demands that's expected out of law enforcement officers today, we've got to move that there. There's some other things that I think we can consider. You know, council last year gave me that pool of money to avoid compaction when we went to 41.5. If you remember, everyone that was below 41.5, we brought them up to that, and then we had that pool of money to avoid compaction for everyone else. And we're continuing to disperse that fairly and equally. But currently, a deputy that graduates the academy is at 41.5, and a captain who is considered a senior member of our command staff starts out at 51,000. So basically a $10,000 difference between the guy that graduates the academy and the most senior member of my command staff. That's where we need to spread those bands the most, is between that starting deputy and the captain's pay. Something that I have implemented this year to avoid that compaction and to encourage and incentivize even better quality applicants and employees is that I kind of implemented an educational incentive program with that money that you gave me last year. So for our employees that have an associate's degree, we gave them a 2% raise. A bachelor's degree, we gave them a 4% raise, and a master's degree, we gave them a 6% raise. And that affected about 50 to 60 of our employees that had some type of degree. You know, Spanish is certainly very vital to us in being able to translate Spanish. So we also offer a 2% increase for someone that can translate Spanish, bilingual in Spanish as well. So that has been implemented. You know, we currently have in place, based on experience, we can bring employees in up to 6% with the administrator's approval. And what we've been using as a guide for that, if we can get someone with 10 years or more law enforcement experience, then we ask the administrator for that 6% pay increase. Just hired a guy with 26 years of experience, believe it or not, that's coming back. There's a provisional currently in the retirement system. That's another factor. But last year, the legislature put in our retirement system a provisional. If you stay out at least 1 year, you can come back with no restrictions on your retirement. So we was able to hire this individual. He started today. But, you know, I would like to see council give some consideration to Ms. Brock's plan of rewarding years of service, you know, for our employees, for county employees, whether that's 2%, or whatever it is. But come August of this year, you know, if we have an employee that's been here for at least 1 year, we give them that step increase. And next year, you know, that program is in place going forward to where that employee knows they're going to get at least 2 to 2.5%, 3%, whatever it is every year that they provide service to our county. I think that would help. I think we would see some benefit from, and we've discussed this before, of having some type of one-time stipend for a referral. If an employee refers someone to us and we hire them, I think there's merit in that we could find applicants that way as well. Whether it's I'm saying a one-time, whether it's I wrote down $250 stipend, whatever we decide to give. They're trying to look at any way we can to incentivize and recruit from a recruitment standpoint and a retention standpoint. We have, our uniform patrol works 12-hour shifts. Some agencies offer a stipend or a shift differential, for a day shift and a night shift, 50 to 75 cents more an hour. And that would be only for 12-hour shifts. So if a uniform patrol deputy got promoted to be an investigator, then he would lose that differential that he was getting, because those are not 12-hour shifts. So that would affect about 40 of my employees. Years of service, something that we're also considering is a health and wellness standard. I'm concerned about that. With the demands that's expected out of a law enforcement officer nowadays, we need them to be fit, we need them to be in shape, but yet we have no standard for that. So years ago, the county tried to incentivize health and wellness by giving a stipend for membership to a gym. And I know that lasted for a few years and it kind of went away, but I'm looking at considering a yearly mandate, whether it's a 1.5-mile run, whether it's an obstacle course that we have that, currently when I hire a deputy, he has to go through an obstacle course, and there's a standard, and he has to pass that, or he has to complete it within a certain time frame. But then, if he's supposed to do it then he should be able to do it 5 years from now or 10 years from now. So we got to, continue to put that mandate out there, possibly giving some type of consideration toward health and wellness, similar to what we had years ago, or we can be creative and just some guidance there for us to be able to offer some type of incentivizing health and wellness for our folks going forward. But I've provided some salaries before, but those all have changed. Like I say, I'm appreciative at 41.5. I'm not here saying that I'm not, I am. But I'm just telling you that going forward, if we want to continue to recruit and retain quality law enforcement officers in our county, I think we have to consider widening those bands from Deputy 1 to Captain, as well as increasing that salary somehow, some way. And I say this not in a bad way. I've always have supported our county employees. They provide a service depending on whatever department they're in. But last year, across our country, police officers getting ambushed increased by 50% across our country. No other county department is faced with that. No other county department has to leave work every day not knowing if they're going to come back home at night. So I don't think, and I'm all for the fire service too, and Chief Crine, hey, those guys provide and it's a danger for them as well. They have a danger in their job. But to me, yeah, I'm a little bit biased. I'm the sheriff, but I admit that. But our guys and our gals, they struggle with what they see in the media. Just the morale, being able to come to work every day, do their job, and face some of the scrutiny publicly or nationally that they have to face. Hey, our folks in Oconee County support law enforcement. Our citizens do, and we're very thankful for that. We're very blessed to live where we live and have the support of law enforcement that we have. But it doesn't change the fact in their minds that when they hear officers last year getting ambushed increased by 50%. And most of that was in the southeast, unfortunately, where that occurred. So we encourage our folks to stay vigilant, stay alert. Salaries are a huge expense, no doubt about it. And like I say, I don't come to you, Mr. Chairman, with a complete plan at this point, but I'm just I've played around with some numbers of that starting at 50 and then, that captain at 75. You know, having that spread between a starting deputy and a senior administrator, with a senior leadership person instead of the $10,000 difference that we have now. But, I'm open for guidance, and I'm willing to provide any additional data that you would like to see or like me to get for you as far as more counties that are relative to Oconee in size and population. Be glad to do that, but I would submit to you, based on what I know and in talking with other sheriffs, I feel very confident in telling you all those counties are going to be higher than our current starting pay, even though, hey, we're at 41.5. So, open to questions or any additional comments you may have.
You know, if you go back into 2017, when you start looking at budget increases, we've made a lot of salary increases and huge investments in public safety. We've made investments here in our staff. So when we, hear the word budget increase, that's where the majority of it is really going. It's an investment in our people, investment in public safety, law enforcement. And I remember when we had an original conversation when I first came on and we started talking about sheriff's pay being at 30. I couldn't fathom how many openings you would have if you still had, sheriff's pay, starting pay in that 30 range. So, we're trying to work, and one of the things I think we've talked about several times is, I'd like to see that around 43 starting. I think that's doable. I think that is is a little bit more of a warmer number, and definitely that gap, and I know Ms. Brock's working there in other places in the county as well, is trying to make sure that we're, sometimes we're hiring somebody at 40, and just like you said, this is not just you, this is other departments as well. When a new person comes in, person's been here 10 years, it's $3,000 more. So we need to make sure that the incentive to stay is there too, because that seniority and what we have and those people that are here. I mean, you've got a law enforcement officer in there 12, 15 years. We have an operator that's 15, 20 years. What they know, you can't teach. So, to me, I definitely think we need to continue moving forward with that. So, I would love, as we kind of work together to talk about years of service and that separation, if we stayed with, that officer making 43 and your captain's at 55, 56, somewhere around in there, I hope council continues to push for salary increases, because as we're seeing there, thank goodness, and I appreciate those that have served on here before with me and with others that have seen that. Imagine if we hadn't have done the increases, the salary increases, we would be in an absolute mess. And I know, our citizens would feel it because we couldn't provide the services around here. So I'm very appreciative of that, and I, stand by that. And again, when we come back through those are investments. I know they're budget increases, and we've done a lot of them without tax increases, which is awesome. And that's, honestly, if, Coney County is a very safe place to live, it's because of our law enforcement. We have a lot of great services, from fire protection to medical to everything else like that. That's why we don't have to have these massive tax increases you're seeing other counties doing to even think about doing something like this. So I'm very appreciative of the work that y'all are doing to make our county safe, that people want to live in. Because I grew up here. I feel safe here. I've always felt safe here. And so I definitely want to see, in that 5-year range, there needs to be a change from if somebody's hired at 43, where are they at in 5 years?
Yes.
Where are they at when they're a captain? Because I agree with what you're saying. The separation needs to be there. Does it need to be 20,000? I don't think so, but there's no good number that I can put on you know, the sheriff's officer. And I'm very appreciative of what they do, but I'm definitely, we need to continue to move up. And as long as council's considering pushing for, 2% increases as we're moving up, if they're at 54, that's, a little bit over $2,000 a year, which is gonna continue to meet the demands of what we're seeing in our economic, climate that we are. But I just wanted to kind of bring that up and open that up to other members of the committee.
Well, I want to thank all of public safety, sheriff's office, the fire, all our public safety. Our focus in the last 4 years has been public safety. Public safety is 50% of our budget. People don't really understand that. They talk about cutting the budget. 50% of our budget is public safety, and that's where we put our emphasis. And I appreciate everything that all the public safety folks do. How many open positions do you have right now?
Currently, I have 8, and that's more than I've ever had at one time.
Wow.
Lost 2 to Highway Patrol, 1 to Anderson County, 1 was involuntary. 3 decided they did no longer want to serve in this profession. They decided to get out of it.
You may not know this, but do you know what your retention ratio is?
I haven't ran it this year. Historically, we've been in the 85% retention rate as far as retention goes. Over the last 5 years, we've had a lot of retirements, career employees to retire. That's hurt us, and those employees not under retirement system not being able to use their experience and come back. But
So now, the law change you mentioned about sitting out a year after you take retirement, have you approached a good number of the folks that did retire and asked them, are they interested?
we have, most people that stay out a year, at that point, they've gotten it out of their system, and I realize how less stressed I am, and I don't want to come back, so. But we are able to get that one. And the General Assembly is, continuing to look at the system and see, there may be some additional changes going forward, but it's a challenge right now. It is finding quality applicants, finding folks that want to work.
Right.
It's a challenge. We've got some interviews lined up this week. Got 3 new hires going to the academy, 1st of March. Quality folks, very excited about them, that we've been able to bring on board. So we've just got to keep recruiting and let me say this, it's not all doom and gloom. The county insurance that you provide our county employees is a huge benefit to the county employees. The rates that the county employees pay are very reasonable. The benefits that the insurance provides is usually more than what's on the state health plan and other company-related insurances. So we try to use that as a recruiting tool for us, because sometimes we're able to hire somebody that's making a little bit more money somewhere else. But when we compare the health insurance cost, Oconee County health insurance cost is considerably cheaper than other places.
Unfortunately, if you're 20 years old, you don't think about health
A
insurance.
20-year-old, you're exactly right. They don't think about health insurance at all.
Or cost of living.
So we try to encourage them to start a 401k or a 457, when they're 20, because when you get 25, 28 years in, 30 years, that gives you a nest egg to pay for health insurance, because you can't keep it when you retire. So.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Mine's good.
Sheriff Crenshaw, I'd just like to say I am totally appreciative of what y'all do.
Thank you.
I don't know how you do it, really. I watch the news every night, and I understand what your folks go through. Now, we are fortunate, like you said, fortunate to live in this county, and it's what I would call a fairly safe county. And but times are changing, cultures are changing, and I'm sure you're probably seeing stuff now that you probably didn't see 10 years ago.
Absolutely.
The ambushing, the fentanyl.
Yes, sir.
You're dealing with issues that we didn't deal with 10 years ago.
That's correct.
And, but I'd like to go back to what Julian said. Now, my previous employer, that was one issue with them, with those folks, was there was a small margin between the hourly folks and the salaried folks. And there was no incentive to move up. That hourly guy could work unlimited overtime and make way more than that salary guy.
Yeah.
So there was no incentive. So that spread needs to be to where that hourly, your lowest paid deputy can work overtime, and he can't get here. He's got to work to get here. So,
We experienced that. You know, with us, captains considered salary, and every captain that I've promoted since I've been sheriff has taken a pay cut. You know,
Yeah.
they
and that's what
lost
we
money.
couldn't do. We took a pay cut. And so I'm thinking, you know, Oconee County ought to be a county that you would be basically stealing other deputies from other counties because they want to come here. You ought to be
that's
going
my
after
job.
Chuck Wright's folks in Spartanburg. Al said, we want to go to Oconee County.
Yes, sir.
That's where we need to be, and in order to do that, we're gonna have to get y'all salaries up or get some sort of incentives, bonuses, something. So they're gonna have to be we'll have to work with Ms. Brock and work all these details out, but I'm all for, and that goes for the fire and rescue folks. They got a dangerous job when they show up. They don't know if somebody's gonna walk up behind them and shoot them in the back.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
But I think you deserve it, and we, you know, I think 50,000 starting is not unreasonable.
That's where we need to
Personally.
get to. We need to move in that direction. How long it takes us to get there, you know, that's up to
We
you
need to
all.
set a goal and shoot for that goal. So,
Thank you. The one I just lost, one of the ones I lost to Highway Patrol, you mentioned hiring bonus. They gave him a $5,000 hiring bonus when they hired him, and he started out at, right at, well over 55. But it was more than 55,000 a year, and they gave him a $5,000 signing bonus. 2,500 up front, and 2,500, I think, in a year or 2 years if he stays.
does your folks, do they get a night shift differential?
Currently, we do not offer that.
See, there's another thing.
That's another.
The guys working at night their danger to them is twice as much or more.
50 cents per hour comes out to about $1,100 a year per employee. You're looking at, really that would, if you do night shift, that would be 20 employees. So $20,000, we could offer a night shift differential. So that's, again, something for us to consider budget-wise as we go forward.
Ms. Brock, within that budget, would he not have the ability to change that differential on that evening pay?
Elected officials are statutorily able to change anything within their own budget, provided they don't go in the red.
Right. So you would just have to, if that was the case, so, Ms. Brock, do you want a motion coming out of here about starting pay? Would you
Well, I
like some
did
direction?
ask Mr. Chairman if I could to bring back the step and scale. Liddell, the finance director, is making copies for me. I brought this to this committee in the past, but since Sheriff brought it up again, Liddell will be right back with the other copies. This is the retention plan that a lot of agencies, federal agencies, state agencies, is basically a step and scale. So if you've been here 1 year, you come in at this pay. If you've been here 2 years, you go up a small amount incrementally. But this also does allow room, and Liddell will be back in just 1 minute, for promotions, for differentials. So if you had a day shift deputy that does the 75, 85 week or whatever, you could put them as a 211. If you have a night shift deputy, they're a 212, and so they're just a different category altogether. And if they fill in, because the day shift and night shift are both in the same workers' comp class, you might just want to put that differential on a piece of paper so that when they see their number, they automatically know that. Now, Sheriff has seen the step and scale before. I should slow down talking to make sure Liddell gets back with the documents. I don't want to move too quickly on that. But this is the document that I had spoken with you about at the last committee meeting. Turnover at the county in 2020 cost us almost $390,000. That's turnover. That doesn't count the salaries included of the staff that we lost. Sheriff talking about staff. Sheriff mentioning staff retiring, and Mr. Davis, I believe you and I were at Helene Hill 2 weeks ago with a long-standing county employee. And they're simply not interested in coming back because they do get a taste of the lower stress life and the lack of having a daily responsibility. And the demands are increasing daily as our visitors and our residential population increases. I'll hand this one to you.
Do we know what the public schools, step increases are percentage-wise?
3%
per year?
generally. So the state this year is doing X amount per certification. So it's a little bit all over the place, but typically 3%. So this particular copy that you have in your hand, as you can see on the bottom, and I'll give Jennifer one of these to include and back up, is a 2%, basically, it's a guaranteed 2% for the years of experience and service that you provide. This will impact county employees because, as Sheriff says, if they come in tomorrow, they don't know if they're gonna get an increase next year or the next year. If council adopts a document such as this, and the school district, federal agencies, again, we modeled it after others. This wasn't something we came up with on our own. But this can give an employee or future employee reliance on what their earning capabilities will be. And they can say, okay, if I come in at 36,000, in 5 years at minimum, without a promotion, I know I'll be making 39,747. And there's a certain amount of assurance that we're finding people want, and I think a lot of that is because there's been so much that's been unsure for the past several years. The rolling of the dice of the future is not a game most people want to play anymore.
So this would replace where, like last year, we gave a 6% across the street?
Correct.
So we wouldn't do that anymore, we just have
Correct.
built in this
You
step
would adopt this scale.
increases.
And there are room in here, as you see, as the scale goes down. So if an employee, say a non-certified officer comes in at a certain salary, when they become certified, they move to the next slot up. As you'll see here in the yellow for each one of the grades, the division or the multiplier by 5 does allow, say, Sheriff, you wanted to bring someone in for a night shift, you could create a 211.
Gotcha.
You could create those in between.
Okay.
What this does is provide consistency across the county pay grades. As we had spoken before, classifying people into workman's comp categories, because that is the risk. Now, the risk of the deputies is very different than the risk of a firefighter, but the uncertainty, the end result is the same. There's a certain amount of uncertainty going into your job.
Sheriff Crenshaw, how many deputies do you have right now?
About 115.
So, so, I guess what, if it was fully staffed, so what, when you
If you count the part-time SWAT medics,
Yeah.
they're class 3, it's about
yeah,
100.
incremental changes, you quickly see how fast you can grow the budget. You know, so you have to
That many
be,
employees.
you have to look at both sides to it, because if we're trying to, you know, Ms. Braga's done a great job at really trimming down the things that are really the meat and potatoes of what we're trying to do here in the county. So when we're making those changes, we don't want it to outpace the growth that we're experiencing. And I think we've done a really, really good job here. And I know Mr. Ellis on here, Mr. Hart's out here, we've done a really good job at really looking at the pace of the county and the pace of the taxes coming in, and putting that with there so the burden's not coming onto the citizens, but the increase in services is given to the citizens. So I think we've done a really, really good job at that. I'm thankful that the county's experiencing the growth that we're doing. So if we're even looking at something, you know, like, you know, 43,000 or even a 50,000, as Mr. Mize suggested, you know, how does that fit inside the budget that we're doing now?
Sure.
Because if you went to a 50, you're talking about taking the majority of your force and taking them up another 10,000. So if you're talking with your budget, you're probably looking at 800, probably $900,000 total,
At least,
to get everybody up to that scale. So if we did a 43, or even 45, and like I said, to see what the committee's thought process is. And we can talk about it. I mean, nothing's, just understand from a committee, it's a committee discussion that we bring forth to council. So nothing we do here is in stone. It's just really a committee recommendation along with information we have. But I would make the motion that we look at a starting pay of 43.5. Is that do you feel let's say 43.5 for starting pay?
Why don't we just make even numbers, say 45? I don't think $1,500 is gonna make that big a difference, is it?
When you start adding it out.
Here's the CPA. I can see the wheels turning.
Well, it's how much we want to increase the budget and how
Yeah.
much can we afford without doing
If
taxes.
Greenville's at 45 and we were in the 44 range, I mean, if we did 44, because I'm going from 41.5 to 44 is gonna be a lot of money, because you got your benefits and all that stuff in there. Lesson learned, when I've looked at it before and didn't think $1,000 pay across the board was a lot, and it becomes a lot very quickly. So, but I'm also gonna make sure that we're making an impact and doing what we need to do to fill positions. But also, it's going to result in years of service increases as well, because we wanna make sure that we're retaining employees as well. And I know we've got to also look at firemen salaries and stuff like that as well in this, which will be in the next meeting. So that's kind of why I'm just cautious to make sure that, because based on what I have seen across the board, at least at 43 or 44, our recruitment takes us into that next step based on the Pickens, Anderson, things like that.
We need to be equitable with the surrounding counties.
So 44, is the agreement? I mean, we can
I go with that.
So I'll make a motion to do, starting pay at 44,000 and look at years of service incremental as suggested, to brought forth back to council from Ms. Brock in your discussion.
Second.
Any other discussion on it? All in
Thank you.
favor? Aye.
Aye.
That is 3 yes.
Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
That's a step in the right direction. Kind of give you some perspective, we're not alone in this. Across the state, in the police officers' retirement system, currently there's about 5,000 openings. Now, a lot of that includes South Carolina Department of Corrections, because they're under the police officers' retirement system. But that gives you perspective of how difficult it is for law enforcement to recruit people into this profession with all that's been going on. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, move on into, the discussion regarding development of an ordinance of foster identification and safe repair or removal of structures and become unsafe for occupations involved with fire damage. Originally got in conversation with Mr. Red over the years about, what had been called in past dilapidated structures, and I don't like the name of that because it can be taken, well, it's easy to take it out of context, because it can be, somebody could call my old barn a dilapidated structure, they could call something in the back. So I wanted to give a clear, communication as we as council are looking at strictly burned out, extremely dangerous structures that have resulted in high crime areas and things like that. So as we're moving forward with codes, to me, it gives a little clear indication of what we as council expect, from codes, and especially in regards to this, because based on the studies that I've done over the years across the county, a lot of these have began with what was a fire at one point in time, and then it was an abandoned structure, and then it was tenants have been in there that are not tenants by the homeowner, because the homeowner or an estate, and some of this is dealt with, unfortunate death of that person, but the estate is in Texas or something like that. So there's no one here, and the structure stays here forever. Taxes get paid on it. But we literally have a structure that is burned out. Some of them have roofs, some of them don't, that are harboring criminal activity, and they burn down. How in the world they are able to stay up after burning down 3 or 4 times, and I know our emergency services and fire here too, to kind of, talk about that, because the problem is when they burn down again, they still have to be inspected to make sure somebody's not in there that's deceased. So I just wanted to talk about that, and I kind of brought forth the, code, and commentary book to kind of look at that as we design. And again, my whole goal of this ordinance is for council to have a discussion strictly on burned out structures. So, Mr. Reed, if you want to talk just a little bit about, I guess, what's currently in the codes and what we could do to help give a clear direction.
What we currently have is the International Property Maintenance Code, which is not spelled out within our code of ordinances. The whole book is not, just like all the building codes, they're thick, that we don't recite them word for word within the county code of ordinances, but it's adopted and incorporated by the reference. The International Property Maintenance Code allows for the full myriad of structures that are uninhabitable or dangerous structures to be taken care of, from first placarding them to giving notice to the owner that this is not a safe structure, boarding them up, condemning them, demolishing them, or causing the owner to do all these things. And if the owner won't do it, the county can do it and charge it back as a lien against the owner. That's all within the Property Maintenance Code, and we have those powers. What some other counties have done, and sometimes it's followed the IPMC, or sometimes it's predated it, is to have a separate standalone ordinance, either coming from the county's general police powers. I don't mean the law enforcement powers, but for general health, safety, and welfare of the county. Those police powers under home rule or within Title 31, you have specific grant of powers to take care of structures that are unsafe and uninhabitable. So some counties, Greenville has had one on the books for a long time. Richland County has one. Just a number of different counties have some that are more of this. I think what you're talking about, Mr. Davis, more of a rifle shot at a particular problem. And, the legislative authority is there for really however you want to pretty much accomplish it. You target the structures, give a good definition of what is an unsafe, uninhabitable by way of fire damage structure. And of course, the element after you identify it is you give the owner due process, so they have a right to, come and say why it's this way, give me time to fix it or whatever. So you have that due process right, and then depending on how that plays out, the county has a full scope of powers to, to take the building down and make it so it's not an unsafe, problem property anymore. And that can be charged back, as a lien against the property. If that ever gets paid or not, you don't know. But so really, it kind of mirrors the same powers that are within the property maintenance code, but it would be specific, I guess, is what you're referring to, for burned out buildings. And the authority's there to do it, and other jurisdictions have done it, and it'd be something I guess you could point to and say, hey, look at a OC code, probably within Title VI. This is what we're going to do.
So we put a lien on the property for the cost of removing the structure.
Correct, yeah. It would lead up to that. You give the homeowner first a notice of, hey, we got this problem with your property. Come in and have, kind of a quasi judicial hearing, nothing, spectacular, very low key, for them to explain why the property's in that condition. And if they don't have a good explanation or whatever, then we can say, all right, we're gonna take these actions if you don't take them, and if you don't take them, then the county can clean them up and charge that cost back to the homeowner. Homeowner doesn't pay it directly, it can become a lien on the property.
Most of these would be something that's 24 months old or longer. We're not talking about your house burns down today and you're dealing with insurance, which can take a while, and, we're coming in there. We're talking about really uninhabitable structures, if we put on there and said 36 months, there's 100 of them out there, I guarantee you. So what I have kind of looked into is what, Spartanburg, Greenville's doing a good job at it, because these structures existed in subdivisions to where, here you are raising a family, and next door, there's a house that's been burned out for 15 years, and you had to keep your kids from playing in it or doing things, and sooner or later, they just fall in. So they've done actually a really good job at working with several agencies of companies that want to come in there, volunteer their time and tear it down, and actually don't charge the homeowner anything to do that. So there's obviously always that exists out there of people that want to help. And I've been involved in some of those efforts as well, because the money to tear these structures down, especially those that don't have insurance, it could cost you $20,000. So what I would like to look into is, number one, to identify what that looks like. And if it's, let's say it's 36 months that a structure's been burned or something like that, which is an easy starting point. And then a contact of the homeowner to kind of discuss what we got going on, or the estate. A lot of them are estates that I've researched on now, that we've dealt with. And it's not just in Utica, there's other communities that have the same issue. What does that deal with, and things like, Ms. Brock has helped as we've, had other properties that we have done. But that's kind of what, I just wanted to kind of talk and let council, or the committee, this is the committee, just kind of, get their ideas.
A lot of those structures, I guess, are attracting squatters and drug activities. Right. I know, Mr. Davis, I know you won't say this, but I saw a film of you and your son knocking down a house in Utica that was burned up, and it was squatters of drugs, and the person that owns it couldn't afford it to tear it down, so you tore it down for them, and I appreciate you doing that. And I can see where there's a need. I know some houses up above where I live that are been empty for years, that are burned out structures that I'm sure there's illegal activities going on.
Do you want to constrain it to just a burned out structure, or you want to include natural disaster like a tornado came through?
My opinion is if we are precise in this ordinance, and we start with square one, and we start with that would keep our codes official busy for 5 years. So sometimes when I have noticed that with council, if we're trying to attack a specific thing, whether it's, hey, let's talk about this, and we add 2 or 3 things over, so that's why I brought up strictly burn, so council as a focus. And to me, that's where I would say the biggest problems I have seen in this county have been from burned out structures that were just left because the cost to tear them down was.
Have you got some data that you can share with that shows how many burned out structures we got in Oconee County? I'd be curious.
I mean, I would say if you took a 5-mile radius of where it was, I don't have the map, but I know there's at least 12 in that 5-mile radius from Goddard there. I know of some other places as well that have that, but I would say if you could spend 2 years there, unfortunately, that people have just left. And some of those are they're tangled up in estates. And some people just don't care because they're not here. They don't see it. And they don't see the harm it causes. And usually when we've made some contact with some of those, we've gotten some leeway, and some of those structures have been removed with the help of the homeowner. So,
Yeah,
including one that lives overseas.
my experience, Mr. Mize, is in the last 4 years, if we make it too broad, it'll get misinterpreted on social media, and we won't get anything done. But if we're specific to fire versus dilapidated, because, it's my opinion versus your opinion, what's dilapidated. But the fire structure damage is a fire structure damage.
And I don't want to use the word uninhabitable either, because some people have their family's home place still on their farm, and it's in poor shape, but it's, means something to them, and that's, they want it there. Sometimes there's stuff grown up all over it. That, to me, I'm not interested in any way, shape, or form looking at that, because that is usually a controlled environment, but these out here, uncontrolled, homeowner is not present. And again, some of them are overseas, so we've dealt with just absolute nightmares on a law enforcement standpoint on going into very poor situations, because realistically, all you can do is trespass them, because they're not, and I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, Sheriff, but by being in a dilapidated structure, there is not a crime there unless they get trespassed. And to trespass them, you have to have the owner of the property agree to trespass them. Would that be correct? So you're talking about, what can be literally a really bad situation in a matter of days, if these properties are found and they know nobody's around them, even if they're in the middle of a subdivision area. So, and it can affect, areas like mine out where I live in the country, and it can affect right outside of the lake communities. There's a few of those out there, because it just harbors it. Because they know what the rule, they know these laws better than any of us sitting up here. So that's why I wanted to be direct with this ordinance. It already exists, but I wanted to be direct and have communication, not just from this committee, but council as well, on strictly burned out structures.
Where I was going with that, and I'm okay for pinpointing, being specific with burned out, but where I was going with that is a situation over in Utica, which is in my district. Tornado comes through, tore up a whole lot of old homes that may or may not been inhabited, and they're still over there, basically unlivable. And if we change this ordinance to the right verbiage, that'll give leverage to start helping better clean up Utica. That's the only reason I was going in that direction. I'm not wanting to take and put the whole gamut in there.
So a natural disaster.
Right.
Would that be, so is the timetable that I'm speaking of, is 36 months
That's
too
fine.
long? I think the laundry list is there if you looked at, but if you're talking about, your tornado, you're looking at 2020, so you're there 36 months.
Yeah, and it's a big red tape thing getting through insurance and estates and getting in touch with folks that own it. So you could spend 3 years trying to get it resolved.
So you would, to add, fire damage and natural disaster, would that be? Would y'all want a motion from the committee?
And for 36 months, it'd have to be
Prior,
36.
yeah, 36 months.
I make that motion.
One second.
Second.
Okay, second. Any discussion?
I have a question. Once the approval is made, please, sir.
Just as a point, when I come back with an ordinance, either to here or to council, depending on where you want me to take it, the 36-month requirement, there'll be obviously a lot to it within the ordinance, but I'll keep it as brief as possible. But that 36-month requirement will have to have a clear exception. If there's some sort of exigent circumstance, there's some sort of impending danger, there's going to have to be some escape clause. There'll be some folks who sit on their hands for the full 36 months until they do something, and could have either primary ill effects or secondary ill effects. I just don't want you to be surprised that I'll come back with some language that covers that.
Question, my thought process on the 36 months, and maybe we need to define that differently, because my thought process is from a event, so from a fire. But then we would have to document when that fire took place. But I would think we would we have that documentation, Chief Smith, of when a fire took place at a resident?
If it was in
We
a
would.
municipality, we may not.
Well, we're not affecting this is county.
If it's in a contracted municipality area, we may not.
So what if we
It is
took,
within the contracted
Yeah,
area,
I
but
don't know who we're doing
let's,
contract.
so would,
the fire, the date of the fire,
Oh,
they may not be able to
so
receive
would
the
the committee
pinpoint address
consider
of the date.
taking, cause I was the one that suggested that and I don't, cause that's way too, you're thinking about from the date, cause that would take, it's saying, because you're gonna notify the homeowner, we're gonna go through that process. So if we take the timetable out of that, it's still, that would be up to the code enforcement officer, correct? I'm just, so what you were thinking is from the time that we notified the homeowner, it'd be 36 months?
My concern is not necessarily with what the initial trigger date was, is that there are gonna be properties where 36 months is too long of a period of time. There are gonna be properties that need to be cleaned up and can be cleaned up, where someone may sit on their hands to the harm of their neighbors or people who are on that property for the duration of this 36 months. And so I just wanna work with some language that accounts for those, potential events. And I was just giving you a heads up that it'll come back for that. If you say, David, we don't like this, we wanna just have a hard and fast fire date, and then 36 months out, we're not gonna do anything during that period of time, then
See, I was
Shell's
thinking
deal.
from the date of the event. So if the fire was 3 years ago, they're already past that 36 months. So I was thinking about it on the retro side of things.
Or the tornado for that matter.
Kind of the tornado for that matter. So I was trying to use a timetable of that rather than, like, to us, if that property was identified, it would go through this, whatever this process is of notification, everything else, and that 36 months isn't on that side, it's on the back side. But you're saying don't do,
No, I understood what you meant but if a fire happened a year ago or if a fire happens today, that the county action would not really kick into gear until 36 months have elapsed.
No.
And that's,
would council, would the committee just take that out and put that as disposal to the code?
I think that timeline needs to start from the time of event and everything be reconciled within the 36 months. Everything be investigated and reconciled at the end of 36 months.
Because we're really not after the world of, if you're battling an insurance claim, we're not
Right.
after that. We're after, so
We're
to
after
me,
you.
why don't we take the timeline out of that and let that be within the code attorney and everything like that? There'll be, okay,
Write it up and bring it back to us.
you wanna restate the motion without the timeline in it?
I'll have some options and I have an idea
There you go.
what we want to cover. I understand and we'll make sure. I mean, obviously we don't want someone who's fighting a good fight to get the property straight. We're not going to try to, put the heavy hand on them.
And unfortunately, in the world of insurance, it can take time. So,
You insurance.
I know.
Understood.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Let's come back to committee.
Coming? Yeah.
And then may I, so county staff could potentially be exposed to unidentified harmful items in a burned down structure. One, most of our code complaints are complaint driven, so we'll have some difficulty. It doesn't mean we can't do it, just up front. There would have to be an establishment of some new procedure for a house was burned down on this day, then we put it on the calendar for 3 years from now, or whatever that process is. But if we're going to charge back to the property or to the homeowner, I'm recommending that we do it entirely third party. That way, any sort of testing on, like, for instance, not
This is-
picking on Utica in any way whatsoever, but the age of those homes,
Right,
most of those homes contain asbestos.
correct.
We don't have enough PPE or training. We can't dispose of that in our current landfill. So there's going to be a cost, and I mean a real cost, associated with the demolition and disposal of such properties. And in that case, we need to establish an amount to go into the budget that coincides with this ordinance, because the county will have to pay this expense up front, and it may be a period of time before that recovery cost is realized by us.
Correct. And I think the biggest issue, we're paying the cost of these structures through crime and activity that's going on in there. So we're spending the money
I
in
understand.
other
I
ways.
just want to put it out
Yeah,
front,
I
that
agree.
there may be materials in those homes, we don't have testing
I agree,
equipment, we would
100%.
have to do like a mitigation process.
Anything
in order
built,
for that.
anything built before 1978?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And
A
I
lot
think my
of
biggest,
lead-based paint, asbestos, I mean, even the burned structure, not knowing what caused the fire could be a concern for the health and safety, for remediation.
Yeah, could have been,
Because, for
meth,
instance,
could have
if
been
it
meth
was
out.
like
Yeah.
a meth lab or something like that, when we wouldn't know. Maybe
it's
the
even-
sheriff's office. And then my other question there is, we may have issued tracking. You know, currently we have 3 municipal contracts for fire service outside of municipal city limits that are in the county, but we're not always given, hey, this fire occurred, this house was damaged this much, at this particular address, on this particular day. So we may not have that information.
yeah, that's why I think it's better to throw that out, period. Just because, to me, if the proper judgment's used and the communication is done together, that'll all work out. So,
But we wouldn't have the date of the origin of the disaster.
well, that one's easy.
No,
Natural.
not natural disaster, we wouldn't have the date of the origin of the fire.
Correct, that's what I'm
So
saying.
we're
If you
describing
took the
that.
origin, if you took the data of the origin of the fire out of
Okay,
the
okay.
ordinance, the natural disaster
I
would
got
be
you.
easier.
So we'll just, when that ordinance comes forth, and we can discuss this right in the strategic plan, there'll need to be a determined amount that we need to put in the budget for this remediation for there to be, we wouldn't receive any revenue the first year, obviously.
Correct.
Can you, so I guess you'll get some quotes or some estimates?
We currently have 20 to 25,000 per 1,000 square feet.
Might not
For a complete
be able to tear
remediation.
down 100 houses in 1 year.
No, we wouldn't be tearing down the house if you did
Well, that
five.
is an absolute complete remediation for a burned structure, for them to do testing materials, solid waste management, and returning it back to, either, what's it called, hydroseed.
So in the budget, we would identify, okay, we're gonna do a certain number of homes per year.
If you said 3,
Or until the funds run out. You
Yeah.
know, not every house is going to cost that. That was just the estimate that we got last year for 3 of the burned down structures that we were reviewing.
now you know why people will tear them down.
Right.
Need, any other motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.